walk down to the Capitol.
Former President Donald Trump is launching his own social media site. The app Truth Social is expected to launch in February. Now, this move comes 9 months after Trump was suspended from social media for his role in inciting the Capitol insurrection.
Well, these are exciting times for Donald Trump supporters and, in fact, anyone who dislikes and distrusts big tech. The former president announced last month that he'll be launching his own version of Twitter, which he's calling Truth Social. The platform is scheduled to have its beta launch any moment now, allowing a few select people to try it out and see if it's any good before the big debut early next year. Will it be successful against the likes of Twitter? Well, we'll try to figure that out in a moment. But first, a quick reminder of how we got here.
The radical left want to steal the election. They're ruthless, and it's time that somebody did something about it.
We have broken through that police line, throngs of protesters climbing the steps.
This is a moment I never saw in my life.
I know your pain, I know you're hurt, but you have to go home now.
President Trump has been banned indefinitely from Facebook and Instagram.
YouTube extending its suspension indefinitely.
Twitter announcing they are permanently banning Donald Trump.
A lifetime ban.
They're on their way to controlling our country, and it's a scary time.
Big tech is out of control. If they can do it to me, they can do it to anyone.
He's got to get his platform going, the President of the United States. He'll have a lot of people who just want a place to go.
9 months after being expelled from social media, former President Trump says he's launching a new media company with its own social media platform.
Not the blog, not Getter.
It's called Truth Social.
Truth Social.
Truth Social is expected to launch in February.
The man who told over 30,000 lies in office has started something called Truth.
The former U.S. president says that it is a way for him to fight back against big tech.
We have ongoing grievances from conservatives that their voices are squelched on mainstream social media.
It is literally an extension of a propaganda machine.
Truth Social also intends to launch a streaming service featuring non-woke entertainment programming.
I do think that there is an audience for it, so this will be potentially a decent competitor.
He is the people's president. He's the people's president.
Mr. Trump admits it's, quote, both hard and expensive to build a new platform. A source says that the Trump team has one shot to launch this new platform, so they are taking the time to do it right.
Censorship is unlawful, it's unconstitutional, and it's completely un-American.
And censorship, has also been really, really bad for Donald Trump. Remember, just before Twitter banned him in January, he had close to 89 million followers. Just look at it now. A sorry sight. A blank page. He's been scrubbed from Twitter history. So how does he reach the American people now? Well, he's had to resort to sending out mass emails from his Save America Political Action Committee. For example, this one about Joe Biden's handling of Afghanistan being a total disaster. They come out pretty much every day, but they just don't have the same impact. He still makes regular appearances on Fox News, of course, but even Fox isn't as friendly as it once was. And if all else fails, he can still meet his supporters in the flesh. He's held a rally pretty much every month since the summer. But if he's going to run again in 2024, and he's not confirmed that yet, he's going to have to reach not thousands, but millions of Americans. Hence the launch of Truth Social. Here's what we know about the platform so far. Rather like LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Signal, Telegram, and Skype, it's going with the classic eye-catching blue and white logo. It's expected to resemble Twitter most closely, allowing users to fire off short, sharp sentences. They'll be called truths instead of tweets, and it's safe territory for Trump, as he was the master of Twitter after all, using it not only to reach his followers, but also to set the news agenda.
The president is making some news this morning.
Is that unusual?
Yeah. No.
Oh, they miss him, really. Ever since he left office, the big networks' ratings have been going down. Question is, though, can Trump attract as many followers to Truth Social as he did to Twitter? Well, according to one survey, about 60% of Republicans are planning to use the platform. Now, Trump's own account will no doubt be a big draw, That doesn't guarantee that Truth Social will be a big hit. There have been plenty of other conservative wannabes that have, for various reasons, failed to slay the tech giants of Silicon Valley. Despite those conservative also-rans, RightForge, the internet infrastructure company that will host Truth Social, estimates that Truth Social will attract 75 million users. And so the owners of Truth Social are looking rather confident. Trump Media and Technology Group announced their merger with Digital World Acquisition in October and had no problem finding investors. Shares in Digital World Acquisition Corporation soared on the announcement and have stayed pretty high ever since.
A trading frenzy in the stock market.
This month, Truth Social will hold its beta launch, allowing a few users to try it out and report back any problems. However, a little embarrassingly, a number of hostile hackers have already tried it out, making fake accounts for Donald Trump, Mike Pence, and others.
His team apparently forgot to do anything to protect or prepare the test version of this thing.
While the app will not be available to the general public until early next year, Americans are being invited to pre-order Truth Social right now. But don't expect total freedom. Terms of service of Truth Social already have a long list of prohibited activities, including using the site to disparage, tarnish, or otherwise harm, in our opinion, us and/or the site. Now, that may sound a bit like any other platform out there already, but it's not dampening the expectations of eager conservatives.
Huge, game-changing announcement for not only Donald Trump, but for free speech, for the battle against big tech, for the parallel economy. Ladies and gentlemen, an enormous game-changing announcement.
Well, there's clearly an appetite for Truth Social, but it may struggle to win users over from the likes of Twitter and Facebook. That's certainly been the case for other platforms like MeWe, which has been around for a decade. The company's founder, Mark Weinstein, told us why it's so hard to take on Silicon Valley.
It's definitely not possible to compete fairly because, for example, we know, we have evidence, and we provided this evidence, that Facebook interferes with conversations about MeWe on its platform. We know that Facebook spends $1 billion, paying $1 billion per year, paying content creators to be on their platform and not to be on other platforms. And content is the backbone of social media platforms. Facebook has 3.14 billion users, right? That's half of the world's population. There's so-called a network effect with that. So at this point, Facebook is a bad actor interfering with capitalism. Also, Facebook is not a social network. So that might take people by surprise. But listen, everybody, Facebook is an advertising and marketing company pretending to be a social network. Their customers are advertisers, marketers, and politicians, not users. Users are the products that they sell to the advertisers, marketers, and politicians.
Okay, let's bring in our guest now. And in New York, we have the social media strategist and digital media analyst, Chris Ruby. Also in the Big Apple, we have Yotam Ophir, an assistant professor of communication at the University of Buffalo. In Washington, D.C., we have Mark Fisher, who is the senior editor at the Washington Post and author of Trump Revealed, An American Journey of Ambition, Ego, Money, and Power. And we also have Shane Bouvet, who ran his own social media campaign for President Trump and is very excited about Truth Social. Welcome to all of you. Chris Ruby, is there a need for this new social media platform?
Yes, I think there is definitely a need for new social media platforms on the right. What we've seen is a total inequality in terms of reach and amplification of different types of voices with creators on the right on social media platforms, and in particular social audio platforms. So there is a need for the new platform that Trump has created, but I think that is just the beginning of what will really be the entrance into Web3 and an overall foray into decentralization.
Yotam Ophir, is there a need?
In my view, we already spend quite a lot of time on social media. I'm not sure we need more platforms, but it is true that some segments of the population, the American population, feel disenfranchised on social media. I don't know if the answer is opening up kind of echo chamber versions of social media where people just talk with people who agree with them all the time.
But is there a need? I mean, what Chris was saying is there is a bias on the current social media structure against conservatives.
There is clear evidence from scientific research to show that, if anything, the way the algorithms work on sites like Twitter actually amplify conservative voices more than it does for liberal voices. There is a new
Chris,
study
your eyes
just
are out
came
on stalks there. You don't believe that, obviously.
I mean, let's talk about that. So how is Twitter amplifying conservative voices? Do we want to talk about Twitter's new social audio program, where they haven't even accepted a single conservative content creator into it for their Twitter Spark creator program for Twitter Spaces? I mean, there's just such a clear bias in terms of how people are chosen, and a lack of overall political diversity in not only the people that are employed at Twitter, but also the people that are chosen for opportunities. And conservative content creators are often last to be chosen for those opportunities. There's massive inequality and inequity across the board.
Yotam, you cited some scientific papers. Perhaps you'd like to bring those into play?
Again, I don't want to turn this discussion into a he said, she said kind of debate. And I think that the bigger point here is that we should talk about social media in more general terms, and not, I think, how it serves one politician or another. I think the bigger question here is not whether or not social media is biased toward one side or the other, but how do we want to regulate social media more broadly? How do we treat this new extremely powerful media platform that is now completely at the hands of private corporations? I think both of us here agree that it's currently being decided by very few people who are not elected by the public, to have such huge power. I think that's the question we need to focus on, not whether or not there is bias. I'm not familiar with research showing
isn't that
what you argued.
But Yotam, isn't that the whole purpose of Truth Social, is to redress the perceived bias, at least? And so it's a pretty central question. Shane, I'll come to you. Obviously you're a conservative, and you made a lot of content on behalf of President Donald Trump. You were so successful, he even offered you a job. Do you think there's a need for Truth Social?
110%. If you look at Jack Dorsey, he is a liberal left, and they have censored me. My posts do not get as much volume as it used to. Fact checkers only existed when the ugly truth started to come out.
Mark Fisher, I know you've met President Donald Trump a number of times, and for your book. Do you think he is a fit proprietor for a social media platform?
I don't think the bar is very high if you look at the existing social media platforms. Certainly anyone can start a business. They have the right to do that. And certainly he has a long history of being an entrepreneur in many different fields. Most of his ventures have failed over the years, but he keeps pushing, keeps trying, and that's what's made him as successful as he is as a celebrity, as a politician, and if not as an entrepreneur. What we see in his latest venture is an effort to capitalize on the extraordinary fame and connection that he has with his following. And so he's trying to do that, essentially monetizing the former presidency. And so, all power to anyone who wants to try to do that. There's not going to be a mass audience for this, as we've seen with a number of attempts to establish a conservative social media platform, whether it be Gab or Clubhouse or any number of other competitors, Getter and so on. None of them have succeeded, but there certainly is room in the market for these fringe outlets to reach a small and ideologically narrow audience.
Okay, Chris, you better come in.
So a few things. One, why are we even calling this fringe? Half the country voted for this person at the time, and even like the response saying that they're fringe outlets is, I think, exactly part of the reason something like this is being created too. Is as the creator at the time of the largest Republican and conservative club on Clubhouse, it's not that I'm not sure that I agree with what you're saying, that there wasn't an audience. I think I have over 14,000 members of that club. It's that the audience, there was no amplification of that because the employees at Clubhouse chose their favorite creators and chose the voices that they wanted to amplify and the ones that they didn't. But to say that that means that the audience wasn't there simply is just not correct.
60% of Republicans, according to a recent poll, say they would be interested in using Truth Social. RightForge, the infrastructure, the social media internet infrastructure company that's going to host Truth Social, estimates 75 million. Are you sure? No appetite?
If they achieve those numbers, that will be an enormous success, quite obviously. But just looking at the track record of ideologically defined social media platforms, whether they be left or right, it's really rather small. The most successful social media platforms have an extremely broad base, such as Facebook or Twitter, and they don't really care what the content is so much as they want people to dive in deeper and deeper. Their algorithms work to push people toward the fringes, toward the ideological extremes, because that's the way they build passion. That's the way they build anger. Anger is the heart of how they retain their viewers, their participants, and so that's the way they have evolved. But certainly, there's room on the internet with its infinite space for any number of these ideologically defined social media platforms, and that's Trump has made a great political success out of reaching, defining, and holding onto a base. Yes, of course, he's won tens of millions of votes, but as we see in the more recent polling, many former Trump voters are hoping that he will not run for office again next time around. So it's he's looking for a different line of work.
You think so? So this is the whole point is not to set himself up for a 2024 run, but to actually make a commercial success out of this.
Yes, I think that's the primary goal here. Obviously, he wants to stay at the center of Republican politics. He wants to maintain a strong hold on his base in order to commercialize and monetize that base. But in the end, of course, he may run for president in the end. He'll certainly act as if he's going to until the very bitter end. But his history tells us that that's unlikely.
Let me pose that question to Shane Bouvet. Shane, you're wearing a Trump 2024. You're anticipating clearly a run, and you were speaking to the president only 4 months ago at Mar-a-Lago. Did he tell you? Did he give you any clue about what the purpose of Truth Social is?
Well, I believe that we need Truth Social. Our rights are being infringed upon. I believe that he needs to save this country. He said the yet is best to come, and I truly believe that.
Sure, but did he give you any clue as to whether he was going to run in 2024 and whether you should start firing up your meme machine again?
Well, it looks like it. I have been firing, and that's what I'm going to be doing. We need to save this country, and I believe that he is going to run in 2024.
Yotam, I know you've got some concerns here about a politician running a media machine. I can't say that that's altogether unprecedented. What's the concern?
Right. Let me be very clear that I don't mind, and I even encourage having as diverse as possible media environment. I'm very happy to see platforms that have a different kind of ideological focus or even interests in general. However, at the moment, Donald Trump is a former president who keeps taunting the possibility that he's going to run again in 2024. He even did not even acknowledge that he lost the 2020 elections yet. As this is the stage of things, I think it's very dangerous to give so much power in the hands of politicians. There is a separation in the United States between the media and the government. It's in our Constitution.
Well, you say that. You say that, and I
tries to separate the two. So
my question to you, Yotam, is yes, you say that, but let's be honest. You know, the Democrat politicians have a great relationship with many of the liberal media, mainstream media, and those outlets, whether it's the Washington Post, New York Times, CNN, MSNBC, they go hard after Donald Trump. And they did all throughout his presidency. And then when Biden was running against Trump, they supported him.
the Washington Post and the New York Times are criticizing the president because he is the president of the United States. That's their role in society, to keep our politicians
You
responsible.
think they treated him equally with, say, Barack Obama?
I believe, I mean, I understand the temptation to think that the New York Times and Washington Post are driven by some nefarious political ideology.
No, but no, I'm not saying nefarious. I'm saying, excuse me, I'm saying
Yes.
ideologically they are biased.
Ideologically, the New York Times and the Washington Post are driven by financial profit. It's always been the case, and pretty much throughout the whole 20th century, they've been striving to be as objective as possible because otherwise they would lose money. It's not an ideological question. It's a private company.
I can't agree with that. I mean, the whole point of the problem with politics and media and journalism today is that the harder and louder you shout and the more of a sort of extreme position you take, the more you get ratings.
That's true, and that's why in a show like the one I'm participating right now, you bring people from different sides to shout at one another.
Yes, we do, but I'm not sure everybody does.
Listen, there is. I mean, you brought me here because I bring the scientific perspective. There is no scientific evidence that the New York Times or the Washington Post or USA Today are systematically biased toward one side or the other. I understand that people feel that, and I respect that. But we actually know that the perception of bias doesn't have to do with real bias.
Chris, it's just
a perception. It has to do with how people interpret media.
But what does that mean? The perception of bias doesn't have to do with real bias. What does that? I mean,
that means that psychologically speaking, if you give a Republican, a Democrat, the same article to read, they both tend to believe that it is biased against their own side. So perception of bias is not necessarily evidence for existing bias. I am very, very, very versed in the literature on media bias, and there is just no evidence to support
Chris,
what you're
it's all in the mind.
There's a systematic bias.
It's not. I mean, I respectfully disagree. It's not in the mind. I mean, look at what we just watched with the Facebook files and XCheck. I mean, they clearly say that there are two sets of rules, so that's not in someone's mind. That's not perception. That's why. I mean, there's debate over that whistleblower, and that's a whole other story. But I would not say that this is perception, and I think this is exactly why more platforms like this one will be created, because of half the country saying that it's perception and the issue is in your head and it's not exactly real. And it's easy for someone to say that, I think, who doesn't live with that on a daily basis.
Chris, we're running out of time. I do need to get to a couple of things about Truth Social, which sound all too familiar. There will be the invocation of Section 230, and there are terms of service which say that if you disparage us or the site, you will have your account. There'll be sanctions. Perhaps your account will be suspended or whatever. But it does sound like more of the same.
Yeah, I know. I will, for example, on Twitter, if you're gonna go after any of their employees, they're gonna say something similar. I'd have to carefully read through that TOS, but I think the big picture here is not this one specific platform. I think the overall goal would be that there would be more like this. We saw that On Locals, for example, just got acquired by Rumble, and I think the future here has to be in crypto, in blockchain, and in decentralization and on-chain governance. I think that is really the answer in terms of censorship resistance. It's not going to be with one person creating an app. It's going to be really where the community is more so in control of that app versus a person.
Shane, does it concern you that this platform is being sold as a big tent place where everyone with all opinions can come, and yet buried within the terms of service are the usual sanctions that if you disparage the site or disparage the owners, they are able to penalize you, perhaps even suspend your account? Doesn't this remind you a little bit of the existing social media platforms?
Well, absolutely. If you look at Parler, they didn't like the message. They didn't like Parler. They took it down. I don't know if it's backed up yet, but as you see, if you're conservative, they want to shut your voice out. They don't want you to have a voice. They don't want you to be on social media. We have seen that over and over and over. What Donald Trump did great at is reaching out to the common men and women of this country. as a former coal miner, I see that a lot of my fellow friends getting banned just for posting their personal beliefs of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that's exactly what they do. If they don't like your message, they'll cancel you. And I believe that Trump Social is going to give us a voice back in America.
Just a final question. Mark was saying earlier that he didn't think there's really an appetite for it. Some polls suggest that 60% of Republicans are interested in using the platform just from a grassroots level. Do you think the appetite is there for this new platform?
110%.
Shane Bouvet, Mark Fisher, Yotam Ophir, Chris Ruby, thank you all very much for your contributions to the Nexus today. Much appreciated. And thank you at home and on your phones for watching. Remember, if you want to see this episode or any of our previous episodes, do go to our channel on YouTube. Just type in Nexus TRT1. Till next week then, goodbye.